Have you ever looked at someone sleeping and felt so much love it actually terrified you? That was me. Every single night for 5 years, I used to watch her sleep. Elena, my wife. Her chest rising and falling, slow, rhythmic, peaceful. The moonlight cutting through the blinds, casting soft shadows across her face. She looked like an angel. A perfectly innocent, completely devoted angel. We had a house. A beautiful mid-century modern, tucked away in the quiet suburbs of Seattle. Hardwood floors, the smell of fresh coffee in the mornings, rain against the glass. It was the kind of life you see in commercials. The kind of life that makes you feel incredibly overwhelmingly safe. She made me feel safe. I met Elena at a small coffee shop downtown. It sounds cliché, I know, but it was perfect. She was reading a paperback, spilled her tea, laughed this bright musical laugh. I was hooked, instantly. We moved fast. You know how it is when you just know. 6 months in, we moved in together. A year in, we were married. I was a high school history teacher, not exactly swimming in cash. But Elena, she was an independent financial consultant. She worked from home, quietly typing away in her office at the end of the hall. She paid off my student loans. Just like that. A wedding gift, she said. She handled all the bills. Told me not to stress about a single thing. "I've got us, babe," she used to whisper, kissing my forehead. "You just focus on teaching." God, I was so stupid, so blindly, blissfully stupid. I built my entire world around her. She was my rock, my sanctuary. But a sanctuary is just a cage with softer walls. If you can't ever leave. I didn't know it then. I was too busy being happy, too busy enjoying the vacations to Aspen, the expensive dinners, the designer suits she kept buying me. I thought I was the luckiest guy in the world. But then, the cracks started to show. Tiny at first, microscopic. Things you brush off because you love them. Like the time a package arrived, delivered to our porch. It was addressed to a woman named Clara Vance. I brought it inside, set it on the kitchen island. When Elena walked in, I pointed to it. "Looks like the mailman messed up," I said. "Clara Vance." I will never forget the look that flashed across her eyes. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't surprise. It was blank, completely terrifyingly blank, like a machine calculating its next move. The warmth drained from her face for exactly 1 second. Then the smile returned. Perfect, polished. "Oh," she said, her voice light. "That's a client. She must have used my address for a delivery. I'll run it over to her later." She took the box, walked down the hall, locked it in her office. It was such a small thing, a simple explanation. But the air in the room felt different, heavier, colder. That night I watched her sleep again. The moonlight hit her face exactly as it always did. But for the first time, she didn't look like an angel. She looked like a stranger lying in my bed, breathing my air. And I felt a sudden sharp chill down my spine. The kind of chill you get when you realize you're alone in the dark. With a predator, I told myself I was overreacting. That's what you do, right? When the truth is too terrifying to look at, you close your eyes. You build a comforting lie. I convinced myself it was just male insecurity. She was the breadwinner. She was brilliant. I was just a high school history teacher. Of course, she had complex clients. Of course, she needed extreme privacy for her work. I buried the memory of the Clara Vance package. I pushed it down deep. But the thing about burying things alive is that they always claw their way back up. Always. A week later, we were sitting on the couch. A normal Tuesday night, eating takeout, watching the evening news. The anchor was talking about a massive corporate embezzlement case. Millions of dollars siphoned off. Shell companies, offshore accounts. The suspect, a wealthy executive, was shown in handcuffs, weeping as he was led into a police car. His life destroyed. His family ruined. I shook my head, taking a bite of my food. "Can you imagine?" I said, looking at the TV. "Thinking you could just get away with that? The sheer arrogance." I waited for her to agree, to say something normal. Silence. I turned to look at Elena. She wasn't eating. She was staring at the screen. But her eyes, they weren't watching the tragedy. They were cold, analytical, completely devoid of empathy. It was the same blank, terrifying mask I had seen in the kitchen. "He didn't get caught because he was arrogant," she said. Her voice was flat, monotone. "He got caught because he was sloppy. He left a paper trail. He trusted the wrong people." She took a sip of her wine, never taking her eyes off the screen. "Amateurs always leave a trail." My stomach dropped. It wasn't a comment on the news. It sounded like a professional critique. I forced a laugh, trying to lighten the mood. "Well, remind me never to cross you." She finally turned to look at me. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Don't worry, babe. You're safe with me." Safe. The word felt like a threat. The real splinter, the one that finally drew blood, happened 3 days later. It was a Saturday morning. Elena was in the shower. The water was running, steam rolling out from under the bathroom door. I was in our bedroom looking for a phone charger. I opened the bottom drawer of her nightstand. Tangled wires, old receipts, a silk sleep mask. I reached in, shifting things around. My fingers brushed against something hard. Plastic. I pulled it out. It was a phone, but not her sleek silver iPhone. It was a cheap, bulky, prepaid flip phone, the kind you buy at a gas station with cash. Why would Elena, a woman who only wore designer clothes and drove a Tesla, have a burner phone? I stared at it, resting in the palm of my hand. It felt heavy, like a piece of lead. My heart started to pound in my chest, a slow, heavy thud. I shouldn't open it. I knew I shouldn't. Opening it meant crossing a line. Opening it meant I didn't trust my wife. But my thumb moved on its own. I flipped it open. The screen lit up. A harsh, bright glare. No password. There were only 3 contacts saved. Not names, just single letters. I'm K opened the message thread for M. There was only one text, received at 2:00 a.m. the night before, while I was asleep beside her. It read, "Transfer complete. Account scrubbed. Do not contact this number again." My breath caught in my throat. Transfer complete. Account scrubbed. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't another man. This was something else entirely. Suddenly, the water in the bathroom shut off. The silence was deafening. "Babe," Elena called out, "could you grab my towel?" Panic surged through me. Cold, electric panic. I snapped the phone shut, shoved it back into the bottom of the drawer, buried it under the wires and the sleep mask. I slammed the drawer shut. My hands were shaking violently. I grabbed a towel from the closet, forcing myself to take a deep breath, to put on a mask of my own. I walked into the bathroom, handed her the towel. She smiled at me, wet hair clinging to her bare shoulders, looking absolutely beautiful, looking exactly like the woman I married. "Thanks, honey," she said, kissing my cheek. Her lips were warm, but I felt like I was freezing to death. The illusion was shattering. The perfect wife didn't exist, and I was suddenly terrifyingly aware that I had no idea who was living in my house. Paranoia doesn't hit you all at once. It drips, slowly, like a leaky faucet in the middle of the night. At first, you can ignore it. You tell yourself it's nothing. But eventually, it's the only thing you can hear. How do you look at your wife of 5 years and see a phantom? How do you kiss her goodbye in the morning, feeling her soft lips while your brain is screaming at you to run? It takes a physical toll. My hands started shaking. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. She noticed, of course. She noticed everything. "You look pale, babe," she said over dinner that Thursday, pouring me a glass of expensive red wine. "Are you getting sick?" "Just stressed," I lied, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. "Midterms are coming up at school. A lot of grading." She smiled, reached across the table, covered my hand with hers. Her skin was so warm, so incredibly reassuring. "We'll get through it," she whispered. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake her. I wanted to ask, "Who is Clara Vance? Who are you texting at 2 in the morning?" But I didn't. I smiled back. I drank the wine. I became a liar too. That night, I waited. I lay perfectly still in our king-sized bed, listening to the rhythm of her breathing. In, out, in, out. Waiting for the deep, heavy cadence of REM sleep. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed a harsh blood red. 1:15 a.m., 1:45 a.m., 2:30 a.m. I slowly peeled the duvet off my chest, inch by agonizing inch. If the bed frame creaked, I knew it was over. I slid my feet onto the cold hardwood floor. She shifted, mumbled something in her sleep, turned over, facing away from me. I held my breath until my lungs burned. She settled. I stood up, a ghost in my own house. I crept down the hallway. The floorboards were a minefield. I knew exactly which ones groaned. 5 years of living here had mapped the house in my mind. I bypassed the kitchen, headed straight for the garage. The air out there was frigid. It smelled of motor oil and damp earth. Her car sat in the dark, a sleek black Tesla, silent, like her. I opened the passenger door. The interior lights flickered on, illuminating the spotless white leather. I dug through the glove box, registration, insurance, napkins, nothing out of the ordinary. I ran my hands under the seats, feeling for anything taped to the metal. Nothing. I checked the center console. Just a pair of expensive sunglasses and a pack of gum. I closed the door softly. A dead end. But I wasn't done. The drip of paranoia was a flood now. I walked back inside, paced silently toward the end of the hall. Her office. She always kept it locked. She claimed it was for client confidentiality. I had never questioned it. Why would I? But I knew where she kept the spare key. On the top shelf of the hallway closet, hidden inside an old ceramic vase we bought on our honeymoon in Mexico. I reached deep into the vase. My fingers brushed the cold brass. I pulled it out. I stood before her office door. The dark wood felt heavy, forbidding. I slid the key into the lock. Click. The sound echoed in the quiet house like a gunshot. I froze, listening. Silence. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was pitch black, save for the faint orange glow of a street lamp bleeding through the blinds. It smelled like her. Vanilla and expensive heavy paper. Her massive mahogany desk sat in the center of the room, a monument to her success. Her laptop was closed. I didn't even bother trying to open it. I knew it would be encrypted, fortified. I needed something physical, something real. I started with the desk drawers, locked all of them. I took a deep, shaky breath, calming my racing heart. Think. If I were hiding something, where would I put it? Not in the desk. Too obvious. I moved to the bookshelves lining the wall. Hundreds of volumes. Tax law market analysis biographies. I pulled them out one by one, checking behind them. Dust, shadows, nothing. I dropped to my knees, feeling the baseboards, pressing against the wood, looking for a hollow panel. Solid. I was running out of time. My chest was tight with panic. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe she really was just a consultant with strict privacy rules. I leaned against her desk, defeated, resting my head against the cool wood. I ran my hand aimlessly underneath the thick, overhanging edge of the mahogany top. Wait. My fingertips brushed against something. Something that didn't feel like smooth wood. It felt like metal. Cold, hard metal. I ducked under the desk, shined the faint flashlight from my phone upward. There it was. A small black magnetic lockbox, clinging tightly to the steel frame of the desk's underside. It was perfectly camouflaged. You could sit at this desk for 20 years and never know it was there. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely pry it off. The industrial magnets fought me, but finally it gave way with a soft thud. I sat cross-legged on the floor, the box resting in my lap. It wasn't a combination lock. It was a simple latch. She didn't lock it because she never expected anyone to find it. I popped the latch. I slowly opened the lid. Inside, sitting on a bed of black foam, were 3 items. The first was a passport, a United States passport. I opened it. The face staring back at me was my wife's. Her beautiful smiling face, the face I kissed every single morning. But the name printed next to it was Clara Vance. I felt the bile rise in my throat. The second item was a sleek metallic USB drive, heavy, intimidating. The third was a key, a long silver brass-headed key. Stamped into the metal was the logo of First National Security, a private high-end vault company downtown, and a number 814. I stared at the items. The air in the room suddenly felt thin, unbreathable. My wife wasn't an independent consultant. My wife was a ghost. Suddenly, a sound. Creak right above me, in the master bedroom. The floorboards complaining under the weight of footsteps. She was awake. Pure, unadulterated terror spiked through my veins. If she found me here, with this, I knew with absolute certainty that I would not survive the night. I frantically shoved the passport, the USB, and the key back into the box. I snapped it shut. I jammed it back under the desk, the magnets catching with a terrifyingly loud clack, creak. The footsteps were moving toward the bedroom door. I scrambled to my feet, grabbed the brass key from the desk, slipped out of the office, pulled the door shut. Click. I locked it just as I heard our bedroom door open at the end of the hall. "Babe." Her voice drifted through the darkness, thick with sleep. "Are you out here?" I was standing in the shadows 3 feet from her office, clutching the vase key like a lifeline. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to sound casual, groggy. "Yeah, honey," I called back, stepping out into the dim hallway. "Just getting a glass of water." I walked toward her, my legs feeling like lead. She was standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the moonlight. "Come back to bed," she murmured, holding her hand out. "It's cold." I took her hand. It was warm, soft. I let her lead me back into the bedroom, back into the lie. But everything had changed. I had pulled the thread, and the entire sweater was about to unravel. The next morning, I played my part flawlessly. I kissed her forehead. I poured her coffee. I smiled as she adjusted her silk blouse. "Big meetings today," she said, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "I probably won't be home until after 7. Will you be okay, babe?" "I'll be fine," I lied. "Just grading papers." She kissed my cheek. She smelled like expensive perfume and fresh mint. "Love you," she whispered. "Love you too." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. I stood by the window and watched her black Tesla glide down the driveway. I waited until she turned the corner, until the street was completely empty. Then I picked up my phone and called the high school. I told the principal I had a stomach bug. The moment I hung up, the house felt entirely different. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene. I walked straight to her office. I retrieved the hidden key from the vase. I unlocked the door. I crawled under the mahogany desk. I unlatched the magnetic box. My hands were steadier today. Adrenaline had burned away the panic, leaving only a cold, sharp focus. I took the metallic USB drive. I didn't use her computer. I walked back to my own cheap 5-year-old laptop in the living room. I sat on the couch. I stared at the silver drive in my palm. This was the point of no return. If I plugged this in, I could never unsee what was inside. I took a deep breath, and I pushed the drive into the port. A tiny window popped up on my screen. No password prompt, no encryption wall. She was arrogant. She believed the magnetic box was secure enough. She believed I was stupid enough to never look. I clicked on the single folder. It was named Archives. Inside were hundreds of PDF files and Excel spreadsheets. I clicked the first spreadsheet. My eyes scanned the rows and columns, numbers, massive, impossible numbers. Transfers of $450, 000, $820, 000, $1.2 million, moving from accounts in Delaware, to shell companies in Cyprus, to offshore trusts in Belize. I opened a PDF. It was a scanned document, a corporate buyout agreement. The signatures at the bottom belonged to executives of a medical supply company that had mysteriously gone bankrupt 2 years ago. I remembered the news story. Hundreds of employees lost their pensions. And right there, in black and white, was the routing number where the liquidated funds had been sent. A routing number that matched the spreadsheet. I clicked another file, then another. It wasn't just corporate embezzlement, it was identity theft, real estate fraud, money laundering on a scale that made my head spin. My wife, the woman who rubbed my back when I had a bad day, was a phantom architect for a massive criminal syndicate. Every dinner we ate, every vacation we took, this house, my clothes, it was all paid for with stolen money, blood money, ruined lives. I felt physically sick. My stomach heaved, and I had to run to the kitchen sink, dry heaving over the stainless steel basin. I gripped the edge of the counter, gasping for air. But I wasn't done. There was still the key, the long silver key with the First National Security logo, box 814. I grabbed my coat. I grabbed the key. I got in my car and drove downtown. The city blurred past me, a meaningless stream of colors and lights. My mind was a chaotic static of memories. Every sweet thing she ever said, every tender touch. Was any of it real, or was I just a convenient, clueless prop for her cover story? A boring, predictable high school teacher, the perfect camouflage for a ghost. I parked outside the bank, a massive, intimidating building of white marble and tinted glass. I walked through the revolving doors. My shoes clicked loudly on the polished floor. I approached the private vault reception. An older man in a tailored suit looked up from his monitor. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" My throat was bone dry. "I need to access a box," I croaked. "Box 814. The man nodded smoothly. "Of course. Name and ID, please." I hesitated. The box was hers. She was Clara Vance, or whoever she really was. If I gave him my ID, he would turn me away. He might even alert her. But I had no choice. I pulled out my driver's license and slid it across the glass. He typed my name into his keyboard. Click, click, click. The sound felt like a countdown. I braced myself for the rejection, for the security guards. The man smiled. "Ah, yes. Your wife added you as a joint signee to the box 18 months ago. Right this way, sir." I froze. Joint signee. Why would she give me legal access to her hidden vault? It didn't make any sense. But I couldn't stop now. I followed him down a quiet, carpeted hallway. We entered a secure, windowless room signed with floor-to-ceiling steel boxes. He inserted his master key into box 814. I inserted the silver key. We turned them together. The heavy lock disengaged with a solid, echoing thud. The attendant bowed slightly. "I will leave you to your privacy, sir. Press the red button by the door when you're finished." He stepped out, closing the heavy door behind him. I was alone. I pulled the long metal drawer out of the wall. I carried it to the private viewing table in the center of the room. I flipped the lid open. There were no files in here, no spreadsheets. It was pure, raw survival. Neatly stacked bundles of $100 bills, hundreds of thousands of dollars in banded cash. Beside the money were 4 passports. I picked them up, my hands trembling violently. I opened the first one, Elena's face. The name, Sarah Lynn, Canadian citizen. I opened the second, Elena's face. The name, Chloe Dubois, French citizen. I opened the third, Elena's face. The name, Maria Santos, Brazilian citizen. She didn't just have an escape plan. She had a whole network of ghosts waiting to be born. She could vanish tomorrow. Poof, gone. leaving me alone in Seattle. And then I noticed a thick brown manila envelope tucked at the very bottom of the metal box. I pulled it out. It was heavy. I unwound the red string. I reached inside and pulled out a stack of documents. I stared at the first page. The words blurred together, but the logo at the top was crystal clear. It was a deed to a multi-million-dollar offshore property. But it wasn't in Elena's name. It wasn't in Clara Vance's name. I dropped the paper onto the table as if it had burned my fingers. The name on the deed was mine. I stared at it, the sterile, silent air of the vault pressing against my eardrums. I wasn't just a prop. I wasn't just camouflage. I was the fall guy. I don't remember driving home from the bank. My mind was completely blank. A white-hot static. I had walked into that vault a husband. I walked out a patsy. The deed to the offshore property, the shell companies. My name, my social security number. I was the CEO of a ghost empire, and I didn't even know it. I put the papers back. I left the cash. I locked the box. When I got home, the house was perfectly quiet. The afternoon sun was pouring through the big glass windows, warming the hardwood floors. It looked like a sanctuary. But I knew the truth now. It was an abattoir, and I was the lamb. At 7 o'clock, the front door opened. "Babe, I'm home." Her voice chimed through the hallway, bright, happy. I was sitting on the couch staring at a blank television screen. I had to force my heart to stop hammering against my ribs. I had to put on the performance of my life. Because if she knew that I knew, I was a dead man, or a convicted felon. "Hey," I called back, standing up. She walked into the living room, dropping her designer bag on the armchair. She looked exhausted. She smiled at me, a soft, affectionate smile. She closed the distance between us and wrapped her arms around my neck. "God, I missed you today," she murmured, burying her face in my chest. Her perfume filled my lungs, bergamot and vanilla. It used to be my favorite smell in the world. Now it smelled like a trap. I hugged her back, my hands resting on her spine. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to shove her away, to run out the front door and never stop. But I held her. I stroked her hair. "I missed you too," I whispered into the crown of her head. That night was the beginning of the Cold War. A war fought in complete terrifying silence. We ate dinner. We talked about her day. We talked about my students. I smiled. I laughed at her jokes. And underneath the table, my leg was bouncing with enough nervous energy to power a city block. When we went to bed, it was pure psychological torture. She curled up against me, throwing one leg over mine. Her skin was so warm. I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling the phantom weight of those handcuffs on my wrists. I didn't sleep a single minute, not that night, not the next. For 3 agonizing days, I lived with a stranger, a predator wearing my wife's face. I needed a way out, but I couldn't just pack a bag and leave. If I ran, she would trigger the trap. She would burn the evidence and leave me holding the bag. I needed a professional. On Friday, I told her I had a union meeting after school. Instead, I drove 3 towns over. I had used a payphone to make the appointment. I paid the retainer in cash I withdrew in small increments over the last few days. The lawyer's name was David, an older, cynical guy with a messy desk and sharp, intelligent eyes, a high-end criminal defense attorney. I sat in his leather chair, my hands sweating. I didn't give him Elena's name. I didn't give him mine. I just handed him a thick folder. Inside were the copies I had printed from her hidden USB drive. The ledgers, the shell company registrations, the offshore deeds. I watched David put on his reading glasses. I watched him flip through the pages. At first, his expression was neutral, bored even. But as he read further, his jaw tightened. He leaned closer to the paper. He flipped back to the first page, then to the third. The silence in the room stretched out, heavy and suffocating. Finally, he took off his glasses. He looked at me. There was no cynicism in his eyes anymore, only pity, a cold, dreadful pity that made my stomach drop into a bottomless abyss. Where did you get these? He asked, his voice low. I found them, I said. A relative of mine is involved in this. I need to know how to get them out, how to go to the police and get immunity. David sighed. He rubbed his temples. Son, he said softly, there is no immunity here. He turned the documents around, sliding them across the desk toward me. He pointed a thick finger at the bottom of the pages. Look at the authorization codes. Look at the digital timestamps. I stared at the numbers. They meant nothing to me. These aren't just standard registrations, David explained, his tone grim. This is a meticulously crafted digital fortress. And whoever built it to fall on exactly one person. He tapped the offshore deed. This property, it was purchased using an IP address. I can guarantee you if the feds trace that IP, it's going to bounce right back to your home router. My breath caught in my throat. The digital signatures on these shell companies, he continued. They require multi-factor authentication, usually a secondary device, like a phone. He looked me dead in the eye. Have you ever noticed your phone going missing for a few minutes in the middle of the night? Or maybe you clicked a link in an email your relative sent you? I felt the blood drain from my face. The cute little articles Elena used to email me. The times I'd wake up and find my phone on her side of the bed. Oh my God, I whispered. David leaned back in his chair. Whoever set this up is a genius, an absolute sociopathic genius. They didn't just forge your name. They created a digital paper trail that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are the mastermind. He closed the folder. If you go to the FBI with this, you won't be a whistleblower. You'll be confessing. But I'm a high school teacher, I pleaded, panic rising in my chest. I don't know the first thing about offshore accounts. It doesn't matter, David said, his voice terrifyingly calm. The narrative is already written. You're the quiet, unassuming teacher who used his brilliant consultant wife as a cover for his massive financial crimes. It's a prosecutor's dream. I sat there frozen. The walls of the office felt like they were shrinking, crushing me. What do I do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. David looked out his window. The bustling street below seemed a million miles away. You go home, he said quietly. You act completely normal, and you do absolutely nothing to upset the person holding the detonator. I drove back to Seattle in a daze. The Cold War was over. I had lost before I even knew I was fighting. I pulled into the driveway. Her black Tesla was already there. The beautiful mid-century modern house sat quietly in the evening light. I didn't see a home anymore. I saw my tomb. I unlocked the front door. The hinges didn't make a sound. She always kept them oiled. The house smelled incredible. Roasted garlic, rosemary, sizzling butter. Lena was in the kitchen, standing by the stove in a sleek black dress, humming softly to herself. It was the ultimate picture of domestic bliss. And it made me want to vomit. I didn't say hello. I didn't stop in the kitchen. I walked straight down the hall, my boots echoing heavily on the hardwood. I went into our bedroom. I opened the closet and pulled down my old canvas duffel bag. I threw it on the bed. I didn't have a plan. The lawyer's words were still ringing in my ears. You are the mastermind. You are a prosecutor's dream. But the primal part of my brain had taken over, the part that only understands flight. I started ripping drawers open, shoving shirts, jeans, socks into the bag. Haphazard, frantic. I needed to get out. I needed to be somewhere she wasn't. I reached for my winter coat. Going somewhere. The voice was soft, melodic. It came from right behind me. I froze, the coat dangling from my hand. I turned around slowly. Elena was leaning against the doorframe. She was holding a glass of red wine. Her posture was completely relaxed, casual. But her eyes, they were locked onto me. I have grading to do, I choked out, the lie sounding pathetic even to me. I'm going to a hotel. I need to focus. She took a slow sip of her wine, the dark liquid staining her lips. She didn't look at the bag. She didn't look at the open drawers. She just looked at me. "You're shaking, babe," she said quietly. I couldn't do it anymore. The dam finally broke. 5 years of love, 5 days of pure, unadulterated terror. It all boiled over into a blind, reckless rage. "Stop it," I spat, my voice trembling but loud. "Just stop the act." She didn't blink. She didn't move. "I went to the vault, Elena," I said, the words rushing out of me. "Or should I call you Clara or Sarah Lynn or whoever the hell you really are?" I waited for the shock. I waited for the glass to slip from her hand and shatter on the floor. I waited for her to deny it, to cry, to beg. Nothing. The silence in the room stretched out, heavy, suffocating. The warm, loving wife I had known for 5 years simply evaporated. Like a mirage, the muscles in her face relaxed. The soft crinkles around her eyes smoothed out. The mask slipped away completely, and underneath was a terrifying, hollow void. She took another sip of wine, swallowed. "You found the box under the desk," she stated. Not a question, a mild observation. "I was wondering when you'd pull that thread. Honestly, I'm a little disappointed it took you this long." My stomach plummeted. She wasn't scared. She was entirely in control. "I went to a lawyer," I fired back, trying to regain the high ground. "I showed him the files. I know what you've done. I know you've been using my name." She finally moved. She pushed off the door frame, walked slowly into the room. She set her wine glass on the nightstand. "And what did the lawyer tell you, babe?" she asked, her tone conversational, almost polite. "Did he tell you to go to the police?" I swallowed hard. My throat felt like sandpaper. She smiled, a thin, bloodless smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. "He didn't, did he?" she whispered. "Because he saw the architecture?" She stepped closer to me, the smell of bergamot and vanilla wrapping around my throat like a garrote. "I'm very good at what I do," she said, looking up into my eyes. "I move millions of dollars for very dangerous people. And when you do that, you need insurance." She reached out, her manicured finger tracing the line of my jaw. I flinched, pulling my face away. She dropped her hand unbothered. "You are my insurance," she said simply. "You framed me," I whispered, the reality of it finally sinking into my bones. "From the very beginning, you targeted me." "I picked you because you were perfect," she corrected smoothly. "A quiet, unassuming history teacher. Clean record, excellent credit, completely oblivious to the world of finance." She tilted her head, studying me like a specimen in a jar. "Do you remember those thick stacks of tax documents I had you sign 3 years ago, the ones you joked were too boring to read?" My heart stopped. "You authorized the creation of the shell companies," she continued, her voice hypnotic, "rhythmically destroying my life. Do you remember when you used to sleep so heavily, and I would borrow your thumb to unlock your phone for 2-factor authentication? I backed up until my calves hit the bed frame. There was nowhere left to go. Every single illegal transfer," she whispered, stepping into my personal space. "Every stolen asset, every offshore account. It all leads back to your IP address, your digital signature, your biometrics." She leaned in, her lips hovering inches from my ear. "If the feds ever come knocking, they won't even look at me. I'm just the devoted wife who thought her brilliant husband was making a fortune in day trading." She pulled back to look at my face. She was looking for the exact moment my spirit broke. And she found it. My knees felt weak. The duffel bag on the bed behind me suddenly felt like a massive joke. I couldn't run. If I walked out that door, she would hit a button and my life would be over. "Why?" I choked out. A single pathetic tear hot on my cheek. "Did you ever love me at all?" For a fraction of a second, something flickered in her dead eyes. "I do love you," she said softly. "You're my sanctuary. You give me a normal life. I love our dinners. I love this house. I want to stay right here with you forever." She reached out again. This time, I didn't pull away. I couldn't. Oh. She cupped my cheek in her warm palm, her thumb gently wiping away the tear. "But I will not hesitate to destroy you if you try to leave me." Her voice dropped an octave. The melody was gone, replaced by pure, chilling steel. "If you walk out that door, I will make one phone call. The FBI will receive an anonymous tip with the exact coordinates of the offshore servers. And you will spend the rest of your natural life in a federal penitentiary." She patted my cheek, 2 soft, affectionate taps. "So," she picked up her wine glass, turned her back to me, and started walking back toward the kitchen. She paused in the doorway, looking over her shoulder. The perfect illusion had reformed. The beautiful domestic angel was back. "Dinner is almost ready, babe," she smiled. "Go unpack your bag and wash your hands." She took a sip of her wine. "You want a wife or prison?" She disappeared down the hallway, leaving me alone in the bedroom, with the empty bag and the absolute terrifying truth. I stood in the bedroom for a long time, listening to the soft clinking of silverware from the kitchen, smelling the roasted garlic, the sizzling butter. My hands were completely numb, cold dead weight at the ends of my arms. I looked at the canvas duffel bag sitting on our plush king-sized bed. My escape route, my desperate lunge for freedom. It looked so incredibly small now, so painfully pathetic. Slowly, mechanically, I reached out. My fingers gripped the brass zipper. I pulled it open. I took out my shirts, my jeans, my socks. I folded them. I walked over to the dresser and put them back into the drawers, one by one. I was burying myself alive. Because she was right. She had built a masterpiece, a flawless, inescapable, brilliant trap, and I was already caught in the jaws. I left the bedroom. I walked down the hallway. My footsteps felt heavy, like a man walking the Green Mile. I stepped into the warm glow of the kitchen. She was already sitting at the dining table, the perfect hostess. She had poured the wine, 2 crystal glasses catching the overhead light. I sat down across from her. "How is it, babe?" she asked, cutting into her food. I picked up my silver fork, my hand trembling just slightly. I took a bite. It tasted like ash. It tasted like absolute crushing defeat. "It's delicious," I lied. My voice didn't even crack. I was already learning. I was adapting to the cage. That was 2 years ago. I am still here, in the beautiful mid-century modern house in the quiet suburbs of Seattle. I still teach history. I still grade papers at the kitchen island. I still kiss my wife goodbye every single morning before she drives her black Tesla to her meetings. But the house isn't a sanctuary anymore. It is a maximum security cell, with heated hardwood floors and stainless steel appliances. 2 years of walking on eggshells. 2 years of checking my reflection in the bathroom mirror, wondering how my hair hasn't turned completely gray. We still go on vacations to Aspen. We still eat at Michelin-star restaurants. Sometimes we are sitting across from each other in a crowded, noisy room. People laughing, music playing. She will reach across the white linen tablecloth. She will take my hand, and I look into her dark eyes. The world around us fades away. The music stops. It's just me and the monster. She squeezes my hand, a gentle, loving, terrifying squeeze. It's a reminder, a tightening of the invisible collar around my throat. She owns me, down to the very marrow of my bones. If I try to leave, she makes the call. She burns me to the ground. If I stay, I'm complicit, a silent, terrified partner in a ghost empire. There is no winning. There's only surviving. I have become a master of the mask. I smile for our neighbors. I laugh at her corporate dinner parties. I pretend I am the luckiest man in the world. But at night, when the lights finally go out, the silence is deafening. I lie awake, staring at the ceiling in the pitch black, listening to her breathe, in, out, in, out. I don't see an angel anymore. I see the warden of my prison, sleeping peacefully right next to me. They say love is blind, but that's a lie. Love isn't blind. Love is just a desperate willingness to look away from the red flags, to ignore the cold shadows, to believe the beautiful warm illusion. Trust is a weapon, the most dangerous lethal weapon in the world. And I handed it directly to my executioner. We all think we know the people we share a bed with. We think we know their hearts, their secrets. But do we really, if you pulled the thread on your perfect life and found out it was a carefully constructed cage, what would you choose? Would you choose a wife or prison? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one of them. And if this story sent a chill down your spine, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notification bell. Because here at the Betrayal Files, the truth is always darker than you think. Until next time, sleep with one eye open.